Let's talk about children and children's mental health. We've just talked about mental health in the other hour, where it leads into substance use, abuse, addiction, and a huge struggle to recover from that. Now, children also suffer mental health issues. I mean, we know that the mental health crisis in Kenya is big. Ivanna Waweru is a child psychologist, and she's here to talk to us about that, about what she deals with on a daily basis and how she's helping children. Good morning, Ivanna.
Good morning, Eric.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Hapa tuna Fixination.
Yes.
One conversation at a time mission.
Unafanya kazi mzuri sana.
Asante. Flannery is going to give you the day's quote.
Yeah. Karibu sana. Today's quote is courtesy of Flannery O'Connor, who was a novelist, a short story writer, and an essayist. And the quote says, "The truth does not change according to our ability to stomach it." The truth does not change according to our ability to stomach it. Unaifilaje?
That's an interesting one. I feel many people believe their truth is the absolute truth. And it's very important for everyone to realize that truth you have is not everyone's truth. And you need to consider other people's point of view. And yeah, it's not easy sometimes because you think, oh, I'm right. My way of life is right. The way I think is right. But the same way, the simple analogy of 6 and 9, if you're looking at a 6 from the other side, you'll see a 9, and from one side it's a 6. So I think everyone should be able to accommodate and stomach the truth of every other person around them and be considerate to it and be open to it. Yeah.
I like that. If you look at a 6 from one side, it's a 6, and from one side, it's a 9. Different points of view, different perspectives, and the ability to be tolerant of that. I like that.
Same. Child psychology is a field not too many of us are familiar with. Unfortunately. How does one become a child psychologist? And who is defined as a child for the purposes of this conversation?
So for me, I've become a child psychologist by studying counseling psychology and then just specializing in children. So I've worked with children I've been in counseling psychology for the last 10 years, and I've worked with children for most of that. And so that's how I've specialized in that. I also say that, so there's the normal child who is under 18, but there's also the inner child in every one of us. So I also do therapy for adults, but I always say I'm addressing the inner child. So we all have an inner child, but of course for the standard of the child that we're describing is under 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
So other people say, toa utoto hapa. You said leta utoto hapa.
Leta utoto hapa.
You
Actually, bring it on.
Okay. How many of you are there? Because we've seen specialization, looking to address adults majorly, because then you are of sound mind at that time. Even children are of sound mind,
Allegedly.
by the way.
I was going to say allegedly. You're of sound mind.
You know, to either figure you have a problem, go seek the services of a psychiatrist or, just mental health expert. But how many of you are there that are specific to kids?
Not so many. I wouldn't give a definite number, I would lie, but there are very few because many people prefer working with adults. They don't want to go to, when you're working with children, you have to go down to their level. Most people don't want to do that. They want to sit high, mighty, pretty, look nice, not deal with all this child. Children are very messy. So you also have to get into the mess. And even as you deal with inner children of adults, it's messy. Yeah, so I think, not many of us, definitely not the majority of psychologists are working with children, no. So we are few, but we try. We try our best.
I like that.
Yeah.
Before we get into the meat of the work you do, your learnings from working with children, because like you've said, you have to get down to their level.
Yeah.
It gives you an insight into how their minds work, into how they view the world. What are your biggest learnings and takeaways?
I think my biggest learnings, also as a parent, I'm also a parent. I have an 11-year-old boy. And one of the things I've realized about children is you have to learn who they are. Like, you can't help a child based on what you know and your knowledge and just assume you know everything. You have to understand the child from their point of view and then support them from their point of view, you know? And so I think that's the most humbling point of psychology, because you realize, no, I don't know everything. I have to go down, understand this person, how does their mind work? What are their challenges? What resources do they have? You know, like what you were saying about the truth we can stomach.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to stomach that child's truth and be like, and let's work with what you have as opposed to what I know. Yeah.
With what we have, not what I know.
Yeah.
I like that. I think I like what you said, and it doesn't sound like much, but you're like, well, you know, how does this person's mind work? No. This person. I don't know. I'm usually just like the realization. A lot of African societies don't view children as people. Nasiko bias. It's just the truth. So it's like
one in total.
Yeah.
And in this case, when we say children, what is the age bracket we are looking at? Do they fall under? Because then there's infants, there's toddlers, and then there's that age before they get to be adolescents, and then now they have young adults. So who in this case are we putting in this basket of children?
As I said before, it could be everyone, but just for the purposes
in terms of your practice.
Yeah, for me it's everyone. Because everyone comes and they bring their utoto.
Yeah.
And you realize everyone is stuck at some point in their childhood. Not many people have moved past some certain ages. Of course, there's 0 to 17. Then you realize there are people who are dependent on their parents even after 18. And that's okay. Because your child is your child. You have to support them until they can become independent. So even those ones are brought for therapy, and they're paid for therapy by their parents. So it's a child. So I wouldn't want to define it as a textbook answer and say, it's 0 to 17. Children are diverse, sometimes even just because they're not able to be independent. They have to rely on someone else. So but I would say that. Again, 0 to 18, but then there are categories, of course.
We're all children, in short. We're all children. Let's get into the mental health of children. One, how does their mind develop? And then if and when do you see what you would say are symptoms of like either a mental health issue somewhere and things like that? When does that begin to manifest? And how does it differ from adults? I think we've gone through the conversation as big people. It's like, if you're unable to do this or function or if you're function is very different for kids. But I know it's a broad question, but let's tackle it. How do their minds develop?
So I think I'd say from when they're born to a point where they're like 2, and even up to 5, they are understanding their world through their parents and their caregivers. So they do rely heavily on their caregivers and their parents. And then as they grow up, especially 7, 8, 9, they start discovering themselves, and they start discovering themselves in relation to school, their classmates, their teachers, the people around them. So they kind of move away from the caregiver to the outside world. They start understanding themselves in context to that. Around 9 to 12, what we'd call the preteen, pre-adolescence, they ask a lot of questions about themselves. So they go back to themselves and they're like, okay, why am I like this? It seems like I'm different. Why am I different? And many parents and people who deal with children shy away from those questions. And it's really important at that age to just answer every question that comes in. Even if you don't know how to answer it, be simplistic, say something, as long as you're not hurting them or even giving them extra information that is beyond their age. So then again, I think now from 13, now the unfortunate thing that happens 12 to 13 is that all your trauma, all the pain, all the unanswered questions just kind of come out because of the hormones. There's now the hormonal aspect of teenagehood. So that's where all the things that happen to you in your childhood, where you manage to suppress, because as you said, Africans, we teach our children to sit tight and this is tough love.
Kangumu.
So, but now wana kangumu, then at 13 and 12 around there, you're wondering, who is this child? Why are they behaving like this? But it's what happened to them. Those questions you didn't answer, now it's acting out.
Right.
So again, of course, gender plays a role sometimes in how they express their pain. So it's expressing their pain, but most of us will be like, this is bad behavior, behavioral issues. Oh, this one is too emotional. They're rebellious, they're rude. So that's when everything comes out, and teenagehood is more of that. Just them expressing their pain, expressing what they didn't express. Some of them continue to suppress, unfortunately, but then now become imbalanced adults. So, of course, there is that play around when we are doing child therapy, trying to make sure you can make sure the next step they go in with balance, as opposed to suppression of pain. Yeah, so I think that's, I don't know if that's...
No, it does. It answers it so beautifully.
Yeah.
You know, my people perish for lack of knowledge. The way adolescence is painted is you're essentially a hormone monster, just raging. And that's it. You know, like blame the hormones. Now I'm coming to the understanding that it's essentially the things that you have suppressed from childhood, from birth all the way to this point, being fueled by the hormones, not just you're just like a hormone monster on the rampage. Thank you. That's incredibly insightful. I'm going to sit with that for a second.
A little bit. I think it's both. The hormone monster is there, and this is the age where the hormones start coming in, and there's a lot of awareness. You're at an age where you're now taking in a lot more information. You're at an age where even in school, in education, you are taking in a lot more. Previously, before education came in, this is the age where you're starting to, come to your senses. You're starting to get expectations from the society. Yeah. You're a young lady, you're a young man. You're starting to join the armies of your community. You're a young girl, you're already starting to get married. This is something that is happening, and there's a lot that's happening at that age at the same time. Now, there may be some elements of things that may not have been addressed and all, but my pushback here is I am not sure. What I'm hearing here is that you'd be able to sufficiently address questions of a growing mind in the single-digit years that would sufficiently suppress, the hormonal expressions in the teenage years. And because there's no textbook. There's no textbook that tells you, tick this box, tick this box. By the time we mtu amefika 9 ameweza kuwa adolescent at 10 you have covered 98%, so you've dealt with your traumas. So then at 13
they'll be okay. You'll be
Yeah.
cruising. They'll be cruising.
But the truth is you can. And one thing I'll say, of course, there may not be a textbook answer. As I've said, every child is different, so their needs are different. But if you go to their level and understand their needs, and you meet them at their level of their needs, then yes, you will help them overcome any trauma that might happen beyond your control. But again, as a parent, you need to realize you are part of the trauma that might happen to your child because of your own trauma. And so there's a way, of course, there's personal healing, your own personal healing, but also just meeting your child where they are. I don't think any child is in a place where they'll be traumatized just because their parents did ABCD. No, it's the failure to acknowledge them, to acknowledge their feelings, to help them through things, to create a safe space, So there are a few things definitely that might not be textbook answers, but definitely are a perfect cookbook to ensure your child, even if they are traumatized by anything in school, hospital, things happen, even like maandamano, whatever. But you're there, you're listening, you're seeing where they're at, you're allowing them to explore, because any unexplored issues, now that's what makes the monster bigger. The monster you're saying is, of course, there.
Yeah.
And you see, we can't say hormones are a monster, because you can imagine, like, now women are dealing with hormones every other month. So it's not a monster, but it's how we don't handle or the way we handle it.
Manage them. But that would require a degree of awareness from the parents,
For
is
sure.
what I'm hearing. Like, if you're going to be able to deal with this child, you yourself, you need to be aware of the fact that these are things they could be potentially dealing with. You don't necessarily need to have the language, but that awareness.
Yeah.
So there's an awareness gap.
Just awareness, for sure.
Okay.
And awareness of yourself and of the child.
Of the child.
Yeah.
As you study psychology, are you taught this?
Yeah.
right? Like, are you taught this is the psychology of a young child? You know, going with ages, put them even in age bands, 0 to 5, 6 to 10, so on and so forth. Are you taught that?
Yes.
So what is it that, tell us, what are you taught of a child at 6 to 10?
So there's a
What are
thing
these
called-
things that because what I'm hearing from you, Ivanna, is you're talking about a lot about trauma, this trauma, the other, and I'm like, are you sure that in psychology school there's a topic here, children traumas
Maybe not. It's not
and good
called-
parenting?
And every child is traumatized.
Yeah, and every child is
child is
traumatized.
traumatized.
And if you don't address this, then the
Yeah.
trauma amplifies.
No, I think there's one called the Erickson stages of development. Yeah. So the way a child develops is categorized according to age, as you've said. And so there are things that at every stage, if they're not able to achieve that, then what happens if they don't achieve this? For example, autonomy, exploring their emotions, body image. There are a few things there. I won't give them in detail, but now they give you the actual thing they're supposed to be working on. If you can support them through this, they're successful to go to the next stage.
Okay.
If they don't, they stagnate. And if they don't, also sometimes they regress back to the previous stage. Yeah, so there's all that. So it's there, it's proven. It's just that sometimes it's also not helpful for other people. Layman language is important. Because you see, if I keep saying, okay, this is what we were taught, this, we won't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
parents will also feel like, okay, you're dropping all these words and then what?
Yeah.
So
I
what do you
get
want me
you.
to do?
Yeah.
Our teachers taught this.
Oh.
In teacher training, because teachers are the ones who are dealing with the mass of these children as they develop, as
Yeah.
they grow,
Yeah.
and they're spending their days with them. Our teachers taught this.
So they have a unit in psychology. Teachers do have a unit in psychology. But I do feel there's a definite need for it to be continuous for teachers. Because I think not only are they unable sometimes to handle some of the emerging issues in mental health, but also they have their own issues in mental health as they try to deal with the children. Yeah.
Hey, I'll go back to now Eric's question with this understanding, because he said, 0 to 6, it's very much attached to the parent. I think there's even a certain age where kids don't realize that they're separate from their mothers. It comes later that, oh my gosh, that's a separate person. 6 to 10, like you said, is looking outward, right? It's exploring. So what are markers or milestones or signs that, they're exploring, they're becoming autonomous, and they're engaging with the world around them?
Yeah, and please pin that.
Oh, okay.
It's time for that break.
Yes.
So we're taking a short break. We're coming back on this conversation. If you've got any questions, comments as well, you can share them with us on all our social media platforms at NTV Kenya. Ivanna Waweru, child psychologist, is our guest.